All right, everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. You ready to tackle a topic that's a real head-scratcher?
Oh, absolutely. I'm all geared up.
Perfect, because today we're going deep into the world of Article 370. Something tells me this one's going to be a wild ride.
It certainly has a reputation for complexity, that's for sure.
No kidding. It's like a puzzle with 70 years' worth of pieces. And for anyone interested in Indian polity and history, especially if you're aiming for those UPSC exams,
Yeah.
well, this is a topic you can't ignore.
You're absolutely right. It's a cornerstone of understanding the dynamics between Jammu and Kashmir and the rest of India.
Okay, so for those just joining the party, what exactly was Article 370?
In a nutshell, it granted special status to Jammu and Kashmir for 7 decades.
7 decades, wow. That's a long time for something labeled as temporary, right?
Exactly. That's where things get interesting. The temporary tag is a bit of a paradox considering how long it actually lasted.
Okay, so temporary for 70 years. Got it. And then in 2019, boom, everything changed.
Yes. In 2019, the Indian government revoked Article 370, which completely reshaped J&K's relationship with India.
A major turning point for sure. So in this deep dive, we're going to try to unravel all of this. We'll look at the historical context, the legal complexities, and the impact of its abrogation.
It's a story with twists and turns that could rival a political thriller.
Couldn't agree more. So let's rewind back to 1947, the birth of independent India. The backdrop for this whole saga. What was the situation like back then?
Imagine the chaos partition was tearing the subcontinent apart. And right in the middle of this turmoil, you had the princely state of Jammu and Kashmir facing internal conflicts and external threats.
It's a very volatile time. And in this chaotic scenario, Article 370 comes into play.
Exactly. It was born out of necessity, a way to navigate J&K's accession to India during incredibly challenging circumstances.
So it was meant to be a temporary bridge, a way to smooth things over.
Precisely. It was like saying, okay, we understand things are complicated. Let's create a special arrangement for now.
A special arrangement that ended up lasting for 70 years.
Yeah, right. And that arrangement was formally established through the Instrument of Accession.
Ah, yes, the Instrument of Accession. Tell us more about that.
It was signed by Maharaja Hari Singh, the ruler of Jammu and Kashmir. It essentially bound J&K to India. But Article 370 was a crucial part of the deal. It recognized J&K's unique circumstances.
So it wasn't a simple, straightforward merger. It had this special provision built in.
Exactly. And that's where the complexity starts to unfold.
Now, behind every historical event, there are always those key players shaping the course of events. Who were the main figures involved in this initial agreement?
2 names stand out. Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, India's first prime minister, and Sheikh Abdullah, a prominent Kashmiri leader.
Powerful figures for sure. Their decisions and actions must have had a huge impact.
Absolutely. Their visions, their negotiations, and the promises made all contributed to the complexities that would later arise.
So we have this temporary provision that lasted for decades.
Yeah.
What happened? Did it just become the status quo?
Well, not exactly. Over time, things evolved. The Indian Parliament gradually expanded its influence over Jammu and Kashmir.
Wait a minute. They chipped away at Article 370's provisions. How is that possible?
It happened through a series of strategic moves. The Indian Parliament used its legislative powers to extend its reach into J&K's affairs.
So a gradual erosion of the special status.
Yes. They used presidential orders to modify how the Indian Constitution applied to J&K.
Presidential orders. So the president had the power to tweak the rules.
In essence, yes. These orders allowed for adjustments to be made, essentially altering the playing field over time.
It's like slowly changing the settings until the original picture looks quite different.
Precisely. And this happened gradually over decades.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this temporary provision became so entrenched.
Yeah.
As a slow and steady process.
Exactly. And it had a profound impact on the relationship between J&K and the rest of India.
I can imagine. So can you give us some specific examples of how this played out? How did this gradual change manifest in real life?
Sure. Over the years, several crucial central laws were extended to J&K using these presidential orders.
Okay, give us an example. What kind of laws?
Laws related to citizenship, fundamental rights, and even the Supreme Court's jurisdiction.
Wow, those are big ones. So essentially, these changes slowly integrated J&K into the Indian legal framework.
That's the gist of it. It was a step-by-step process.
It sounds like a game of chess with each move carefully calculated.
You could say that. And then in 2019, the game changed dramatically.
2019, the year Article 370 was effectively abrogated. What happened?
Well, it's quite ironic, actually. They used Article 370 itself to dismantle its provisions.
Oh, hold on. They used the very provision that granted special status to abolish it.
Exactly. It sounds paradoxical, but that's what happened.
Okay, my mind is officially blown. How did they pull that off?
They issued a presidential order that basically neutralized Article 370, rendering it inactive. And then they introduced the Jammu and Kashmir Reorganization Act of 2019.
What does that act do?
It completely changed the game. It bifurcated the state of Jammu and Kashmir into two union territories, Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh.
So J&K went from being a state to a union territory. That's a massive shift in its political structure.
Absolutely. And it was a controversial move with far-reaching consequences.
No doubt. So the stage is set for a whole new chapter in the story of J&K in India.
A chapter filled with new challenges and opportunities.
And that's precisely what we'll explore in the next part of our deep dive. The impacts of this abrogation, the reactions, and the ripple effects.
It's going to be a fascinating journey as we uncover the complexities of this historical event and its implications for the future.
Absolutely. So stick with us as we delve deeper into the world of Article 370.
A world where history, law, and politics collide in a truly captivating story.
A story that's still unfolding.
Indeed. And one that holds valuable lessons for anyone interested in Indian polity and history.
Especially for those gearing up for those UPSC exams.
Absolutely. It's a crucial piece of the puzzle.
So until next time, keep those minds curious and those thinking caps on.
We'll be back with more insights and analysis to help you navigate the complexities of Article 370 and its legacy.
See you soon.
Until then. So we left off with the abrogation of Article 370. It was a seismic shift in the relationship between J&K and India.
A real game changer, for sure. And like any major event, it triggered a wave of reactions both within J&K and on the international stage.
Exactly. People were trying to make sense of what it all meant, what the consequences would be.
So let's unpack those reactions and dive into the implications, starting with the government's stated objectives.
Right. The government's main goals were threefold: greater integration, development, and security for the region.
Essentially, they wanted to streamline things, bring J&K more in line with the rest of India.
Yes. The idea was that closer administrative control would pave the way for progress and stability.
But how did the people of J&K feel about all of this? It must have been a lot to process.
It was. And the reactions were understandably mixed. Some saw it as a positive step, a chance for a fresh start.
A new era for J&K.
Exactly. They welcomed the prospect of increased development and closer ties with the rest of India.
So for some, it was a beacon of hope. But I imagine not everyone shared that optimism.
You're right. There was also significant opposition and skepticism. Many viewed it as a loss of autonomy, a threat to their identity.
A clash between integration and the preservation of their unique culture.
Precisely. They feared the erosion of their cultural and linguistic heritage, the possibility of being overshadowed by the dominant Indian culture.
So it went beyond just the legal and political aspects. It touched upon the very essence of their identity.
Absolutely. And these anxieties weren't unfounded. There were concerns about potential demographic shifts, the influx of outsiders altering the social fabric of the region.
It's a complex issue, for sure. A delicate balance between unity and diversity.
And this tension isn't unique to J&K. It's a recurring theme in many diverse societies around the world.
Okay, so we've got these contrasting views within J&K itself. But what about the international community? How do they react to the abrogation of Article 370?
Well, it definitely made headlines globally. Pakistan in particular condemned the move.
That's not surprising, given their long-standing involvement in the Kashmir issue.
Exactly. They viewed it as an illegal move that violated international law and threatened regional stability.
Did the abrogation worsen tensions between India and Pakistan?
It definitely added fuel to the fire. It led to diplomatic clashes, military posturing, and heightened rhetoric.
So it exacerbated an already volatile situation.
Yeah.
What about other countries? Did they try to intervene?
Most countries acknowledged it as an internal matter for India, but some expressed concerns about human rights and the need for dialogue.
So a lot of diplomatic hand-wringing, but no concrete action.
Essentially, yes. It became clear that any resolution would have to come from within India through dialogue and engagement with all stakeholders.
Okay, let's shift gears now and talk about the tangible impacts on the ground.
Yeah.
How did daily life change for the people of J&K and Ladakh after the abrogation?
One of the most significant changes was the modification of land ownership laws.
Ah, yes. The laws that previously restricted non-permanent residents from buying property in J&K.
Exactly. Those restrictions were lifted, which sparked a mix of hope and anxiety.
So anyone could now buy land in J&K. What were the hopes and anxieties surrounding this change?
Supporters believed it would attract investment, boost the economy, and create opportunities, but critics worried about land-grabbing, price inflation, and the displacement of local communities.
A classic dilemma of development versus displacement. What about employment opportunities? Did those change as well?
Yes, previously, certain government jobs and educational opportunities were reserved for permanent residents of J&K.
So those reservations were lifted.
That's right. It opened up competition to individuals from other parts of India.
On the one hand, a wider pool of talent, but on the other hand, concerns about local job displacement.
It's a balancing act for sure, and it's still too early to say definitively what the long-term effects will be.
Okay, let's move on to the political structure. J&K was downgraded from a state to a union territory. How did that impact the power dynamics?
It was a major shift. As a state, J&K had its own elected legislature and a chief minister with significant power.
But as a union territory, it's under the direct control of the central government, right?
Exactly. The central government appoints a lieutenant governor who holds executive authority.
So less autonomy for J&K, more direct control from Delhi.
That's the essence of it. But it's worth noting that J&K still retains a legislative assembly.
So it's not a complete takeover. There's still some level of local representation.
Yes, but the assembly's powers are limited compared to a full-fledged state. The central government retains control over key areas like law and order and police.
It's a unique arrangement that reflects the complexities of the situation.
Absolutely. And it's important to understand the nuances of how this new structure functions.
Okay, we've covered land ownership, employment, and the political structure. Anything else we should touch upon?
Yes, we need to address the impact on the social fabric of J&K. The abrogation sparked debates about its effect on the region's cultural and religious identity.
Concerns about the potential dilution of Kashmiri culture.
Exactly. Some feared the suppression of their traditions, languages, and way of life.
Did these anxieties translate into any concrete actions?
Yes, there were protests and demonstrations, some of which turned violent.
So a response rooted in fear and uncertainty.
Understandably. The government responded by implementing security measures, including restrictions on movement, communication, and public gatherings.
A clampdown to maintain order, but also a potential infringement on civil liberties.
It was a difficult situation. The government argued that these measures were temporary and necessary to prevent further unrest.
It sounds like a turbulent period for the people of J&K, marked by hope, anxiety, and upheaval.
Indeed. And the long-term consequences of these events are still unfolding.
It's a complex story with many layers and perspectives.
And it's a story that continues to evolve as J&K navigates this new chapter in its history.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, exploring the reactions and implications of Article 370's abrogation.
It's been a fascinating journey uncovering the complexities of this historical event.
And in the final part of our deep dive, we'll try to make sense of it all, distilling the key takeaways and lessons learned from this saga.
We'll delve into the broader themes and implications, offering insights for anyone interested in Indian polity and history, especially those preparing for the UPSC exams.
So stay tuned as we wrap up our exploration of Article 370 and its lasting legacy. Wow. We've really been through the ringer with Article 370, haven't we?
We certainly have. It's a story that takes you on a roller coaster ride through history, law, and politics.
Absolutely. From its inception to its abrogation, we've examined every nook and cranny of this complex issue.
And we've seen how it has shaped the lives and destinies of millions in Jammu and Kashmir.
Exactly. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what are the key takeaways? What have we learned from this saga?
I think the biggest lesson is that even provisions enshrined in the Constitution can be rewritten by the forces of history and politics.
It shows how dynamic the law really is, and how it's constantly being shaped and reshaped by the prevailing political climate.
Exactly. It's a reminder that the law isn't static. It's a living, breathing entity that evolves over time.
And in the case of Article 370, it evolved over 7 decades. Before undergoing a dramatic transformation.
Precisely. And this transformation raises some fundamental questions about federalism, autonomy, and the very idea of nationhood.
Big questions indeed. How do we balance the aspirations of diverse regions with the need for national unity?
It's a challenge that many countries face, and Article 370's story provides a unique case study.
Absolutely. So for our listeners out there, especially those preparing for the UPSC exams, what are the key points they should remember about Article 370?
Well, first and foremost, understanding the historical context is crucial. Why was this provision introduced in the first place? What were the unique circumstances surrounding Jammu and Kashmir's accession to India?
So going back to the roots of the issue, grasping the historical backdrop.
Exactly. Because without that historical context, the legal and political developments just don't make sense.
Okay, history check. What else is essential?
The legal nuances of Article 370 are equally important. What were its key provisions? How did it define the relationship between the central government and the state of Jammu and Kashmir?
So delving into the legal framework and understanding its intricacies.
Precisely. Because those legal details shaped the course of events for decades.
Makes sense. What about the human element? The people whose lives were directly affected by this provision and its eventual abrogation.
That's a crucial aspect as well. We need to understand the diverse perspectives on Article 370, the motivations and concerns of those who supported it and those who opposed it.
Multiple viewpoints, the human side of the story.
Exactly, because ultimately this is about people and how their lives were impacted by these decisions.
And that brings us to the impacts themselves.
Yeah.
The consequences of Article 370's abrogation.
Yes. It's important to analyze how this move affected the political landscape, the economy, and the social fabric of Jammu and Kashmir.
So looking at the real-world effects, both intended and unintended.
Precisely, because those effects are still being felt today and will continue to shape the region's future.
It's a complex tapestry of consequences that we need to unravel.
And that unraveling requires careful research, critical analysis, and a willingness to grapple with nuance and ambiguity.
No easy answers here, just a deep dive into a multifaceted issue.
Exactly. And for those who want to delve deeper, there are plenty of resources available: academic articles, legal documents, government reports, and first-hand accounts from the people of Jammu and Kashmir.
A wealth of information to explore. But it's important to approach these sources with a critical eye.
Absolutely. Question assumptions, challenge biases, and form your own informed opinions.
It's about becoming an active learner, engaging with the material, and seeking a deeper understanding.
Precisely. The study of Article 370 is an ongoing journey, one that demands constant curiosity and a thirst for knowledge.
Well said. This deep dive has certainly been an eye-opener. It shed light on a pivotal moment in India's history.
And it's a story that's still unfolding with implications that extend far beyond the borders of Jammu and Kashmir.
To our listeners, we hope this deep dive has equipped you with valuable insights and a framework for further exploration.
Remember, Article 370 is not just a historical footnote. It's a living story with lessons for the present and the future.
So keep those minds curious. Keep asking questions and keep learning.
The journey of discovery never truly ends.
That's right. And we'll be here to guide you along the way. Until next time, keep exploring and keep those intellectual gears turning.
See you soon.
Bye for now.